Always enjoy the annual Great Reno Balloon Race. Kicking things off here to start vlog 131. It's always just a great time of year, I think. Summer's ending, usually fire season's ending here in Reno like it is hopefully this year, and football season starting, not so hot. It's just always a great time of the year. So wanted to include it in this edition of the vlog. I do have a absolutely crazy hand to tell you about at the end of the vlog. And that's because last week when I didn't record a new vlog because I'd shot 2 the week before, just happened to be the week where the game was the best that I've ever seen it in the history of the Pepper Mill. And it was just unbelievable. 4 VIPs were in the game, chips were flying, and I wanted to bring to you a hand as a result of that. However, this edition of the vlog is going to be current. I try to always keep them current, and that's going to be the case here. So we'll head over to Pepper Mill for vlog 131. I'm in for 200 big blinds on this Thursday afternoon that happens to be the first day of the NFL season. And the only thing I'm asking for this year is for any team other than Tampa Bay to win. Tom Brady has won enough. Is he the greatest of all time? Yes, but this is just getting absurd. The first hand comes when we get 2 limps and I get dealt 8-9 of clubs on the button and decide to pick up 5 circular betting discs and see what I can make happen. Big blind folds, and both limpers call. So with 80 in, the flop is 10-6-4 rainbow with 1 club. Check to me, and I bet 35 here, and only under the gun decides to call me. So with 150 in, the turn is the queen of clubs, giving me a backdoor flush draw. Since my plan entailed double-barreling clubs, I figured it was a must bet. I make it 75, and he doesn't take too long before mucking. After a slow first hour of play, I pick up queens and get 1 street worth of action on a 9-high board, but a fold on the turn, and then I pick up king-queen of clubs in middle position and raise to 20. The button, who has been the most active player in the game, calls. So with 45 in, we get a flop of 7-5 deuce, 2 clubs, and I come out and bet 30. He decides to come along. So with 105 in, the turn is the deuce of clubs, giving me the flush. I check, planning on just calling because I didn't think that he had much, and I didn't want to blow him out of the hand. That would ultimately be an incorrect thought process. He checks back, though, and the river is a 6. I bet out for 60 here, and he doesn't take too long before raising to 165. I didn't love it, but I never even considered folding this hand. So I make the call, and we have a $435 pot, and he shows pocket 5s for a full house. Fortunately for me, he played it the way that he did and did not even come close to winning the max. Then the same dude limps under the gun, and I raise ace-10 to 25, and he calls. So with 55 in, it comes ace-jack-4, 2 clubs. Under the gun checks, and I bet 25, which he proceeds to match. So the 105 in the pot, the turn is the 7 of diamonds, and he checks. I bet out for 40 here, still figuring that my hand's going to be good most of the time. He calls. So 185 in, the river is the 7 of clubs. I expected him to lead out a decent amount, but he decides to check. Now my kicker no longer plays, but the question remains, is this too thin to bet? Now my answer to that question, based on years of training from Crush Live Poker, generally is no. I bet out for 40. He thinks about it and opts on the check raise to 95. Now, if he really had a flush here, would he really want to risk me just checking back? And wouldn't he want a little more value out of it? And didn't it kind of seem like I was relatively thin? All these things factoring into my decision to go ahead and call this bet. So we have a $375 pot, and he shows Jack-9 offsuit, turning a jack into a bluff, and we take that one down. Then a button straddler raised out of turn, and I called him with 10s. I thought that I was in business on an ace-10-3 board, but he ended up just folding to my turn bet. I then bet folded ace-king on a king-high board when a random raised my $85 bet to 600. And a half hour later, we get a doctor opening to 15 from +1, and he gets 3 callers. I have ace, king of hearts in the cutoff, and my goal was to get one of these 3 guys to call and the others to fold. So I make it 90. The doctor thinks about it for a minute and calls. And you know what happens from there. They all call. So with 450 in, the flop comes king 4 deuce, 2 spades. Pretty hard to beat here. Check to me, and I fire 200, which amazingly results in all 4 guys folding. My days of raising and hitting top pair and winning didn't last long, though, as my ace-queen lost to ace-6 on an ace-high flop with a unfortunate 6 turn. Then I pick up ace-8 of spades in middle position and make it 20, getting 3 calls. With 80 in, it comes ace-3-5, 1 spade, 1 diamond. I bet 35 and get 2 callers. So with 185 in, the turn is the 8 of diamonds, giving me top 2. My $85 bet instantly forces out the low jack, but not the button. So with 355 in, the river is the 9 of diamonds. I bet her all in for her last $125, and she calls, giving us a $605 pot, and she shows 5-6 of diamonds for a backdoor flush. I then pick up the nut flush draw, but fold it when I run into trip 5s. And then I ran a 3-barrel bluff against an unknown that was unsuccessful, though if I'd bombed the river, it probably would have worked, but I sized down thinking that there were certain hands he was never folding, and I needed to target his missed draws that were better than mine. But as it turned out, he had just taken a check call line with top pair. Either way, most of my profits had disappeared on the day. The game stayed good, though, up until 9 p.m., and later got even better with the addition of 1 VIP and another guy who proved to be a maniac, but at first I didn't know that. There was a hand where the board was ace, 3-4, 5-6. And I bet $85 on the river with ace-king. And it's something we'd seen before from a different guy. But I bet 85, and he raised to 600 with the one-liner out there. I decided to fold. He showed queen 6 for just a pair of 6s. After that, I went as card dead as you can go. And the few hands I did get, well, never held up. So I stayed till midnight, but I wish I hadn't. All right, cashing out, booking a $364 loss. To say I didn't have my A game tonight feels like an understatement. Kind of a weird day. It's like I had all my big hands early on in the session, and I had a winning image at that point, so I didn't get max value out of most of those hands. Later on, I misplay a couple of hands, and I develop a losing image, and then I just couldn't get anything to hold up. And had I gotten hands that were actually the best hand with that losing image, I would have made a lot more. Because of course, you win more with your big hands with the bad image. As weird as that may sound to those of you who are somehow new to poker, which if you're watching this, you're definitely not. Anyway, frustrating day here at Peppermill, and well, we'll just try to bounce back. All right, so the hand of the week this week comes from last week. I shot vlogs 129 and 130 on the same trip, so I didn't shoot one last week, and as fate would have it, well, I ended up in the single best poker game that I've ever been in my life. And it is pretty unfortunate that that was the week that I chose not to vlog. Didn't have my vlogging phone with me, wasn't really set up or prepared to do it, but it was crazy. It ultimately ended up where on this Friday night, there were 4 VIPs in this game with me and no pros. And make no mistake, I capitalized on it. It probably would have been, I think it would have been the single biggest win of my career if I had had pocket queens hold up against queen 10 in a 3-bet pot on queen jack 9, which makes me about a 75% favorite. Got it all in for about 2,000 total and lost the pot. But the most interesting hand of that night was one that I just felt that I had to tell you about here. Before we get to that, if you haven't already, and you play on Poker Bros, consider joining my group. It's called High Society, and the action is fantastic. I predict you'll like it. I always think of Poker Bros as really a great place to go to kind of practice between live sessions. You can get an hour in here, 20 minutes in here, whatever you want to do. Check that out. Click the link in the description below and use my referral code. Now, as far as this hand, it came before the game was really at its best, and there was still one pro in the game at that point. It comes in under the gun 2 limps, and the hijack over limps, and a pro in the cutoff raises to 25. I have king, queen of spades on the button and make the call. As you might expect, the others make the call as well. So with 100 in, we see a flop of jack of hearts, 9 of hearts, 10 of diamonds. Slightly above average for me. Which, by the way, that kind of brings up some painful memories of vlogs past with that board. But on this particular board, I'm where I want to be. Under the gun 2 bets out for 25. And the hijack, a VIP, makes it 75. And the cutoff folds. With the heart draw out there, I'm definitely going to re-raise it right here. I make it 175. And I don't know why I'd be amazed by this, but for some reason I was slightly surprised. Both call. So with 625 in, the turn is an offsuit 7. Plus 2 checks, and the hijack, who's got us both covered in this hand. That's 700. I have about 1,400 left at this point. Pretty clear as to what my play is. I jam all in. I expect plus 2 to fold pretty quickly here, but he starts thinking about it, and ultimately decides to put in the rest of his chips. The hijack calls the remaining 700, so we have a $4,400 pot. The hijack ends up showing jack 10 for 2 pair, and plus 2, queen 10 of hearts for the straight flush draw. So there's 3 of us in here. We're obviously not running anything twice in a 3-way pot. So I just have to hope that I get a brick on this river card. And sure enough, the most beautiful 5 of spades I've ever seen in my entire life peels off. The most harmless card in the deck. And we scoop. So that pot was obviously the biggest highlight of what was ultimately one of the most unforgettable nights of my poker playing career after that, because the game just got so much better. Now that was obviously the highlight of the night in terms of how I ran good. I didn't run as good as I certainly could have. In addition to that, hands with the hand with queens against queen 10. There were some others I lost as well, but still, ultimately, I ran above average and booked a sizable win on just one of the most amazing nights considering the lineup. So that was cool. I do think I was pretty much on my A game that night, as opposed to last night when I definitely was not. But I gotta say, despite winning that $4,400 pot, it wasn't even the highlight of the week for me. And maybe I shouldn't mention this because I know some of you don't care, and I understand why. But I just gotta tell you, for those of you who have been with me for a while and might find this sort of thing interesting, the highlight of the week was the fact that when my son was over here and he was spending the time with me, he proved just how much smarter he's getting. Where I can now say, Austin, what does the cow say? He says, moo. Austin, what does the sheep say? Bah. What does the horse say? Neigh. And it serves as like one of the first true examples of things that I can ask him, like questions I can ask him, and he will give me the actual answer. It was just an unforgettable moment. So that was fantastic as well. And I just thought I would point that out. That said, let's go to the question of the week. The question of the week this week comes from Jeffrey, and he says, I don't see you play tournaments. Would this be something you would do sometime? Well, when it comes to tournaments, my relationship with them is interesting. Because in 2009, when I would watch the main event on television, I, of course, like so many, just dreamed of poker tournament glory. And I played my first World Series of Poker event in 2010. I did not cash, but I was right on the doorstep of cashing. I remember just the disappointment that was involved in that. And amazingly, we are 11 years later, and I've still never cashed in a multi-table tournament. And I used to think that that was like kind of a reflection that I'm just not that great of a player or whatever the case may be, but I look at it as an interesting form of run good. Because I do think that had I cashed in that World Series of Poker event in 2010, I might have gotten addicted to that feeling of going deep in tournaments, and I would have chased them so much more. When the best poker players know, and I'm not discounting tournaments, but the best poker players know that there's just more skill in cash game poker. When you're just going to the river every hand with decisions to be made, as opposed to being all in before that, there's just more skill. And I learned that pretty quickly on. So I just basically gave up playing tournaments years back. Now, again, if I had more time, I probably still would give them a shot, just because, you know, there is an element of fun to them in addition to the skill, and there's a different skill set, and I haven't done it, but I know the feeling of going deep in a tournament is unlike anything else. You know, there's some great feelings that you don't have to experience yourself to understand why they're great. But the opportunity cost is also great. You know, the time you have to give up to play them is extreme, and you know, when you have a job like I do, it does not lend itself to playing tournaments. That's why cash game poker is so great. I can make my own hours. But tournament poker, you gotta be taking days off, you often have to travel and book rooms and all these things like that, and I just don't like it. So the fact that I'm somewhere in the vicinity of 0 for 10 lifetime in tournaments, I don't consider running bad at all. I think it's served me well, because I realize that I'm a cash game player, and that's where my bread's always going to be buttered, and the fact that I haven't wasted time on these tournaments isn't the end of the world, you know. So I'm not saying I would never play. I've always heard the main event is, you know, great value, and if you can beat a 3-5 no limit cash game, you should play the main event. That's what Bart Hansen has said, and I believe him. I have not done it yet. I might at some point, but at this point my focus remains on cash game poker. That'll do it for this edition of the vlog. Thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't already, do me a favor, hit the like and subscribe buttons. It definitely helps out this channel a great deal. We'll see you back here next time.